Okay, so let's start. I have the first item. Let me share the screen. There is a proposal from a dev team to improve file resizing, file image resizing. So we have, as you may know, we have a command, CLI command that resizes images, and the proposal is to distribute it or to make it asynchronous actually to the message queue. So the proposal is pretty simple. Implement scheduler service that will accept image file names and schedule task to resize images via Magento bulk interface. Implement consumer that will process image resizing based on already implemented image resize service, and modify image resize console command to add the possibility to use scheduler service instead of resize service. So yeah, the third item is about backward compatibility. We were discussing what will be better to make sure that we will not break anybody. Should we preserve default behavior and add an option that would allow you to run it asynchronously, or should we just modify the behavior and not add any options to the command? Any opinions, any more details that we should request, or it sounds fine for now, or maybe there are any concerns already?
Sounds reasonable to me.
Hi,
Yeah.
Hi, Olga. Hey, it's Ravi here. This just from Magento Marketplace store side perspective. I don't know if it's part of this, but what will be really nice is, and maybe this is probably documented in DevDoc somewhere, of all the different image resizing, the sizes that occur, the logos and all of that. If that's documented somewhere, I mean, that'd be great. What would be nice is for in the API calls to just send the URLs that are already pre-adjusted to Magento specifications. So the images are hosted outside of Magento. I know this may not be exactly the same topic, but I wonder if both solutions can be supported somehow.
So once again, the solution that you propose is use some third party to resize images, or
exactly, that'll confirm, and so that in I guess the motivation here is that what we are trying to save is the image size, right? So today in the catalog API, we have to send the entire image, all the logos, the images for the carousel and all of that, which is base64 encoded inside the JSON payload, right? Obviously, that makes the payloads pretty big, and it adds to the the overall network I/O costs and all that on AWS and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So the suggestion, what would be really nice is just send URLs, and basically a service outside of Magento will serve those images. It could be CDN and all that, but it'll be pre-resized and to all the Magento specifications, and all the API would do is a version of the catalog API which will only accept URLs, right? Now, in theory, we could write an extension on top of what we have, and we could do this ourselves. I just thought I'd bring it up if that can also be considered in the design.
Yeah, so there are some ideas about how images should be handled in Magento. It's just, I think it's more it's more complex discussion. It's like not very complex, but I mean it's more significant change to Magento because it will be behavioral change. And yes, we definitely want to improve what we have right now with images and with media in general. So maybe I will talk to you later when I will find some time finally to work on proposal about media, and we can discuss the requirements in more details on what you want to have. It's it sounds pretty clear for me, but I can get back to you. I think the proposal that we are looking at still makes sense and we can implement it and it will be useful for now and it can be done in 2.3 release, while what you propose should be probably done in 2.4 or somewhere.
Cool,
where
thanks.
you can favor. Okay, anything else about this one?
So, to what Ravi was saying, in GraphQL, we have already taken the decision that Magento should not handle images at all.
Yeah.
Right? So
I mean, in the future, yes. For now, we still we can
exactly. It's the way it works right now, and it's in the future, I think.
Yeah, and I think this command line tool, anyways, it can be kind of extracted from Magento, so it can be considered as default tool for resizing images, while you can use something else. It's important that Magento itself doesn't do resizing on the fly. Okay, so I just don't want to take more time. I was requesting 5 minutes, and I guess everybody agrees that this is a good proposal, so we can move on with it. And then I'm done. Next one. Who's next one? Alex? Just one more question, I'm sorry. So regarding backward compatibility, any opinion about what will be better to just modify the behavior so it starts working asynchronously, or add an option so somebody can configure how it should work? Okay, no opinions. We will discuss it with product owner. Okay,
It might be good to align with static content deploy.
It's different a little bit. So static content deploy doesn't use message queue. It's not asynchronous, it's just parallel.
Okay, Alan? So I'm going to walk you through a proposal of detailed architecture for multi-service Magento. This is continuation of the initial proposal by Anton Creel, where this is, I'm just showing previous proposals which preceded the one which I'm going to present, so just so you're aware. And if you're not familiar with those proposals, it's definitely recommended to go and look at them first. So the main goal of this proposal is to understand data flow and propose architecture for deployment and serialization and other aspects of multi-service Magento setup. Suppose it makes sense to look at diagram, and I will just walk you through some structural diagram. So we have clients on the left, and we have storefront gateway, which accepts queries from the client, and then it proxies them to some services in the internal network. So you can see that this is a boundary of private network, and all external calls must go through storefront gateway. Then we have server-side PWA application. In Node.js, we have GraphQL engine or GraphQL server. We can also have custom storefront BFFs if we need storefront backend for frontend. And we also have independent GraphQL storefront authentication gateway for improved security and control. It is possible to merge this with GraphQL engine itself, but then it will not be possible to granularly configure and ensure that these endpoints are secure. On the other side of GraphQL engine and BFFs, we have storefront APIs, like catalog storefront service, customer storefront service, etc. So these are Magento storefront services which are not existent at the moment, but we have some ongoing activity in scope of improving performance of GraphQL, and also in scope of those activities we introduce new storefront APIs. There are also dedicated authorization services, token services, and authentication services. So now let's look in more details into each of these and what responsibility of these components are. So we have clients. Clients are basically browsers or some other storefront clients. And responsibility of the client is to store the context. Let's say if user switches language or currency, it is the responsibility of the browser to make sure that it remembers the state and remembers the choice of the customer. It also needs to store customer context token and authentication token if customer is logged in. And then it has to send all these data, like all these parameters with each request and headers. And by the way, all of these like tokens and store context, all of them should be transferred and proxied with all calls in the system. So if storefront gateway gets these headers, it's responsible for sending them, let's say, to PWA, and then if PWA needs something from GraphQL engine, it makes GraphQL call, and it's also responsible for including customer context, authentication context, all included in the headers. So let's assume that we have browser and the user hits product A HTML URL, and this URL is routed to storefront gateway, and storefront gateway is responsible for routing this query to one of the backends like PWA or GraphQL engine or authentication gateway. It is also responsible for checking cache and caching responses. So it will try to see if the specific query is already cached, like response is already cached. If yes, then it will just return it back to the client. If no, then let's assume it was query which we desire to process using PWA. So in this case, it will be routed to PWA. And I just want to note that this PWA is different from the PWA that we have right now. So this idea is based on server-side rendering versus client-side rendering, which is current basis of existing PWA. So in this approach, PWA application will be responsible for rendering HTML on server side, and that it will be React application, which will be returned to the client eventually, and the browser will continue working with that React application and continue making queries directly to GraphQL engine. But let's assume that for this example that this is the first query and we'll have any cache. So what will happen? PWA will find proper React component for the query which client issued, and it will render HTML, CSS, etc., JavaScript, and it will also need some data to populate the page. And to get the data, it will send query all the way to storefront gateway again, so it will be treated as external query. It is important to know that it should go through external external network interfaces, because it should not matter for React application whether it is fetching data while being on the server side or in the browser. So on initial call, it will fetch data during server-side rendering. However, when the application is already rendered and the client browser receives HTML, result in HTML with React application, React application will make queries directly, AJAX queries directly to GraphQL engine. And that's why they will go through the same storefront gateway. And that's actually why it is important to send queries through the same storefront gateway. So the query for data, for product data, goes again to storefront gateway. In this case, it is routing it to GraphQL engine, and we will probably, routing will be pretty simple. If query has GraphQL front name, URL front name, it will be routed to GraphQL engine. If it's something else, then probably it will be routed to PWA. And for authentication, we will figure out again some very specific rule. So it will be specific rule for GraphQL, specific rule for authentication gateway, and everything else goes to PWA. On GraphQL side, what will happen? GraphQL engine will have to parse the query, and also it is possible that not all data will be included into the query, which is necessary for making requests to storefront services. Catalog storefront service for retrieving products may, for example, require customer segment, customer group, or current store code. And let's assume you just hit the browser or hit Magento URL from search engine. It is possible that you won't have any context, and it will be just anonymous query with no specific context selected. In this case, the proposal is to put logic for query enrichment in GraphQL engine, and what will happen, like GraphQL engine parses the query, and then it tries to translate based on some configuration, XML configuration, it tries to translate this query into calls to storefront APIs, storefront services. Some data may be missing, and then it will have rules for populating or enriching queries with some specific arguments. So it will be a configuration which will say what arguments can be enriched and what is the enrichment source. Additionally, there will be rules on how to perform fallback. For example, some enrichment data can already be cached here. If it's not cached, then we will try to take it from authentication token. Let's say if it's customer ID, we will try to get it from authentication token. Actually, we will, in this specific case, we will always get it from authentication token. But if you look at, let's say, customer token, customer context token, it will contain customer group, but if it's not present, then we will fall back to default customer group, and it will be extracted from customer storefront service. So it may sound complicated, but basically, GraphQL engine will be responsible for parsing GraphQL query, understanding how to translate it into calls to underlying storefront services, and potentially adding missing data to arguments. So then we send query to our storefront service, which is basically our service contract responsible for storefront scenarios. It generates response, and we go all the way back through storefront gateway, and response gets back to PWA application. Then it is ready to render the page, HTML page with React application. It sends response back to the client, the browser. And as I mentioned earlier, all subsequent calls will be done via Ajax, and they will be routed to GraphQL engine directly. So let's say if user is on category page and it goes through different page, it uses pagination, so it tries to view second page. In this case, React application, which is relevant for this specific page, is already in the browser, so it doesn't make sense to load it from the PWA, and the query will go directly to GraphQL engine. Additionally, there are cases when customer is authenticated, and what will happen in this case, query will be routed to authentication gateway, and then customer has to pass credentials, and credentials will eventually get to authentication service, and authentication service can be as simple as storage of customer password hashes and customer accounts and customer ID. So it will be similar to what we have right now in Magento by default. And by the way, I would like to know that customer credentials will not be stored in existing customer tables like it is now. It will be part of separate service. It will be separate authentication service. It is also possible to replace it with some single sign-on or some other integrations. And what will happen, authentication service based on customer credentials identify customer ID, and then it will ask token service to generate token based on this customer ID. So it will be included in the data, and then it sends it back. So token service is the only service which has secret key for signing tokens, and it will be issuing customer context tokens. Let's say if customer logs in, so it will first get authentication token, which will be delivered all the way to the browser, and then browser is responsible for sending, or client application is responsible for sending second query to get customer context token. It will be sent to generic GraphQL engine, and then GraphQL engine will identify necessary parameters which need to be included in the context. By default, in open source, it will be just customer group. In Commerce Edition, it will also include customer segment, and then it will send query to token service with all data to be included in the token. And token service will generate token, and it will be sent back to the client. So why we need two tokens? There is actually a reason for that in caching layer. If we have, let's say, single token, and it includes customer ID, customer group, it will be necessary to parse this token and extract customer group to generate cache key, because customer group is usually part of scopes, and it needs to be included into cache key. However, customer ID is obviously have to be excluded from cache key, because then you will get one cache entry per user, which is obviously not what we want to have on server side. And if you have two tokens, authentication token will only be used for authentication purposes, and customer context token will be used for two purposes. One is for cache key, and it's important to know that even though customer group and customer segment values will be encrypted, and they will not be visible for the user for just sensitivity reasons, it will still be possible to use it for cache key generation. And then when it arrives to GraphQL engine should be able to use those customer group and customer context values from the token. So it will verify signature first of all, and then it will extract the values from the token and use them for making queries to, let's say, getting list of products and getting product prices. And obviously product prices can be dependent on customer group. So user, like end user, must not be able to specify customer group he likes. He must always get the group which was assigned to him by the server side. And that's where a token comes handy, because it has signature, and we are able to modify that to verify that user wasn't tampering with the data. There is also serialization service which will be used by independent, like individual storefront services. So basically, storefront service will be responsible for understanding what ACL permissions should be checked to give response. And it will be taking customer token, customer authentication token, and it will understand what user is, so it will understand what customer ID is, and it knows what required ACL permissions for this specific query, and it will just ask authorization service whether request should be authorized or not. So authorization service will contain all our ACL mappings and permissions. And admin user should be able to manage this authorization service state via special admin API gateway. Okay, so I believe I covered most of the proposal here. I would also like to mention that all components should be scalable, and most of them should be extensible. So we need to make sure that PWA, that domain services, list of supported authentication mechanisms, like authentication service, authorization service, and GraphQL server itself, all of them must be extensible. The only part which I believe should not be extensible at the moment or does not require extensibility is storefront gateway. And yeah, so if you look at diagram again, so storefront gateway may not be extensible, and everything else here should be extensible. And obviously, we need to keep in mind that if it means extensible, then after installing extension on one of these services, they will have to be redeployed. And the only case when we can avoid it is authorization service, because it should be possible to reconfigure authorization service using the admin API gateway without actually deploying any custom extension code there. Additionally, on the top of the diagram, you can see that we should be able to route our queries to third-party APIs as well. And the third-party APIs could be our cloud SaaS, for example, like Magento SaaS, like order management, etc. So all these queries may go to storefront gateway, and they may go to third-party. There are also a couple open questions. Whether PWA should be supporting multi-service mode. So my understanding is probably not, but it is discussable. And the reason why I believe it should not be supported because of increase in complexity and probably degraded performance due to additional hops during request processing. And one more question, not directly related to this proposal, but independent on this decision, whether storefront services should be able to enrich queries themselves, or we should still have it as responsibility of GraphQL engine. So currently it is responsibility of GraphQL engine, but it would be nice to remove it from here and simplify GraphQL engine itself to make it more slim. But in this case, it seems like it should go to storefront service, and then storefront service should make some arguments, scope arguments, optional, and if the value is not provided, then it should be able to understand how to fetch this value from other services, and it may potentially introduce extra dependencies between services. So this is another open question. And the proposal also contains a couple of sequence diagrams, which I'm not going to go through because I already basically discussed it in just using words. And it has sequence diagram for authentication and sequence diagram for PWA query processing. Any questions?
What is multi-node?
Multi-node what?
Well, first question.
Multi-service, you know?
Multi-service mode.
Oh, it's basically whether we want to make it like modular and split into multiple services. So we have larger. So for now, we say that PWA will be just single. It will be like monolithic application.
Yeah.
But the question: do we want to make it multi-service as well?
Split the PWA.
Yeah. So if no questions, I understand the proposal is pretty large, but if you have time and desire, please go ahead and review it and leave feedback. It is still under discussion, so if no feedback within a week, probably we will merge it. But otherwise, we can wait for feedback if you have time to read it and leave your feedback. So I suppose then we can move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I stop sharing for now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Lena?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So what I want to discuss is GraphQL schema for the wishlist functionality. First of all, I want to start that we have few items already implemented. Actually, only one query is already implemented, is wishlist. It returns the content of the customer wishlist. So as a result, wishlist output is already in the in the Magento code. Here it is. I marked with comment that it's already implemented, and the same for wishlist item. And today I would like to discuss a few more mutations. It's create wishlist, remove, add products to wishlist, remove products from wishlist, and update. Actually, add products to wishlist, this mutation was already discussed in scope of single mutation. So I just moved this data from to the new document, and it was approved. About remove product and update, those mutations are pretty straightforward. I believe there will be no question regarding this. It's the same approach like we have right now for adding products to cart. And but what I want to discuss is, first of all, right now wishlist item contains ID. And right now it's integer. I believe we don't want to expose entity IDs, and we need to come up with some decision regarding this. Here in the proposal, it was it's the only idea I have. It's to change to ID, and probably for now just return base 64 encoded string of the actual ID, and then use this ID to update wishlist items, to remove wishlist items, and so on. This is first, I would say, not a problem, but I think we need to decide, we need to make some decision regarding this. And the second one is create wishlist. Here in the proposal, I wrote that this mutation should return, if not exist, it will create new wishlist, or if wishlist for customer already exists, it should return existing ID. Again, this will work for single wishlist. So for commerce edition and multiple wishlist functionality, it will not work, because we need to whether create new mutation, like, I don't know, create multiple wishes, something like that, because in this case, it will work with only one customer wishlist. And yeah, probably, yeah, those two questions about ID and single versus multiple wishlist are still open. Somebody wants to add something, because I hear a noise, but
I have a question about IDs. Can we use product exclude identify wishlist item?
No, we cannot, because we will have different set of options, entered and selected options.
Exactly. You may have two wishlist items with the same as code.
And then could you please clarify, are you working on UID proposal? Because I believe this question comes up several times already, came up several times, and I've seen some activity on this.
Could you please repeat the question? Or it's not to me.
It's not strictly connected here, but yeah, we probably may introduce a UID for wishlist identification. Should be not so complex, but but this proposal not ready yet. So maybe we can postpone this question or discuss this later a little bit. But I'm good with your proposal how to handle ID right now. I believe it will be simple to migrate to UID when UID will be ready to adopt UID. Magento. So I'm good with first question, and have more questions regarding second topic, multiple wish list. As far as I remember, do we have a wish list ID? I don't remember. Do we have a wish list ID in a single mutation operation?
You mean cart ID in this? In those
wish list ID. Wish list ID.
Probably I didn't get the point.
In case we have a wishlist ID in add to wishlist operation, I believe we automatically support multiple wishlists.
Yes, but that's not something we want to deliver to the open source edition.
Why so?
Because it means that in GraphQL for open source we already will support multiple wishlists, and for just front end and other stuff it is supported in enterprise only.
My understanding we will have an interface compatible with both editions, open source and commerce, and I believe this is good from extensibility standpoint. So for clients who will build application.
Yeah, I'm good with this approach. It will be like easier to implement. I will just confirm with product owner. So in this case, it will work like maybe we should rename this mutation and get and only create all the time new wish list. That you mean? In the same way like create empty cart works like right now.
Sounds reasonable. Guys, what do you think?
So how do you get existing wish list?
Request wish list for a customer. As well
yes,
as,
wish list for
the
customer.
same logic.
Okay. So query wish list query doesn't like what does it return if you don't have a wish list? Does it return
this one right now?
Yeah. Or does it create also if there is no wish list?
No, it will return empty. Nothing will be returned.
So I suppose it should be unified with what we are doing for cart now. Chris is going to describe it also today.
But there is no guest wish list.
Yes.
Actually, no, I'm wrong. I just checked in the code. It will create empty wish list. Yeah.
Yeah, I should create one.
On get?
Yes.
I'm not sure this is a good idea too.
Yeah, so it should still be aligned with proposal which Chris is going to discuss, because in cart we have the same problems right now.
And wishlist outputs should be probably an array.
Wishlist.
It can be several mutations. The Enterprise Edition may introduce get multiple wish lists which will return an array because I believe
so you think that wishlist output, if no wishlist is created for, like if wishlist does not exist for customer, empty response should be here, and like to get
otherwise
customer's wishlist, it should be created first.
Yeah, otherwise you would not
using
have
this mutation.
wishlist at all. There's no purpose for that.
So how about postponing this until we finalize solution for cart? Because we are doing very similar things for cart right now. and then we can just align wishlist with what we have in cart. But my current understanding that it's probably makes sense to return array even for open source, and then you will not have client code at all. And the only part that should be added is just wishlist name in the wishlist type. And looks like that's will be the only change in commerce.
But since that exists already, we have to deprecate that and introduce like wishlist.
Yeah. And so my additional question was why it's not part of customer, but let's just postpone it for now and let's discuss it later.
The other problem is that whenever you create something, you have the debate if it's a mutation or a query.
Yeah, that is also part of discussion.
Okay, and what do you think about changing, breaking change from integer to ID?
I don't think we can do it.
So what, like, why do we do it?
Changing type.
Yeah, I understand. Why do we do it? Is it necessary or is it just line with everything? Like, why
we do?
Yeah, because
why they can do it?
Okay, so it's not really functional requirement.
Yeah, it's a step towards exposing ID.
Yeah, and to Anton's question, why we cannot do it, because it will be changing type, and if you have any proxy classes generated on strictly typed languages, they will break.
Okay, but
technically,
we would like to do so.
Yeah, but we cannot do breaking changes. I don't know. It should be
discussed. I got your point. But
okay,
we have to clarify these questions for the owner to make sure that he understands that we will have to deliver this change eventually, and he has to schedule this change.
And ID is totally different type, right?
Yeah, you can do like UID and
so ID is extension of string. I'm not sure exactly how will strictly typed languages will like differentiate between them, whether they will have separate type or they will just create string for that.
But still, it was int.
Yeah, it's definitely not int. The ID is extension of string.
Okay, so most likely, if it's not necessary, we should postpone it.
But in this case, we would have to change everywhere from ID, like here, and use integers and wishlist items.
Fire or something like that.
Yeah.
But why everywhere? It's only in wishlist item, right?
Yeah, in wishlist item, in order to update wishlist item, in order to remove and.
That's how you identify the nudging operation. We had the same problem on entities with your resolver.
Yes, I guess it will be good to describe what will be pros and cons on, like what will be drawbacks of introducing it, and what will be the drawback to postponing it. And then just we will have this artifact and make a decision.
Okay, guys, so we have let's probably move on. This looks like it needs to be postponed anyway, and we cannot approve it now.
Yeah, and maybe it would make sense to have a separate meeting with guys who work on the cart, so we can align quick, like faster.
Yeah. We need as soon as we have decisions there, we should align.
I mean, you can discuss.
Can we guys agree on mutations like remove product from cart to at least approve this document partially?
Okay, so let's think offline on this, how we move on. Maybe we will break it down in some steps. Okay, next, Alex again.
Well, I will try to take only 2 minutes. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can.
So this we have already discussed once. However, I changed proposed solution from alternative to proposed. So basically I swapped alternative with what I proposed previously. And the reason for that is that looks like it will be problematic to, so just to remind, so what is this? Initial proposal was about introducing AV metadata into GraphQL schema. And the problem with that approach is that we won't be able to easily represent options for selects and multi-selects. And that's why I believe we should swap proposed and alternative solutions. And for now, what I'm saying that let's take existing custom attributes metadata query, and currently it requires attribute code, entity type, array of these items, and it will give you data only for the items which you request for. I propose to make it optional, and then you should be able to get metadata for everything in the system, and then you should be able to cache it on the client side. Additionally, I propose to include some fields there which will allow to understand if specific attributes is dynamic or fixed. It will allow to render different tabs, attributes on different tabs on product details page. And additionally, it will allow to understand whether specific attribute should be used in advanced search or product listing or compare products, or we can extend it in the future. And second part, we can introduce page-specific custom attributes just to fetch attributes for advanced search, for example. You just send this query, you say, I want attributes for, let's say, products compare, and it should give you only attribute metadata for those attributes which need to be used there. Yeah, so that's the basic idea, and if you have any comments or questions, probably leave them in the proposal, because we don't really have time to discuss them all.
I think just that as a argument for the custom attributes directly, we don't have to introduce the query, but that's up to you.
It's probably just for convenience, because not all clients will like to fetch all schema. Maybe they decide not just to use specific queries.
Yeah, lighter payload.
Yeah, and this will allow to use specific queries as it was before. Thanks.
Thank you, Igor. Enums.
Okay. So in the scope of making a declarative schema compatible with different databases, we need to introduce enum to be able to restrict values of the parameters and the return values of the methods. So what will give us introduction of enums? In general, we would be able to specify a list of possible return values and arguments. For return values and for arguments, we would be able to get list of all possible values, and we can make this list final, but by making a enum class final. So PHP has but it's a library that needs to be additionally installed, and it looks like there are some problems of installing this library on PHP 7. There is also implementation of a PHP implementation that has similar functionality and interface that I propose to introduce. Here's an example of how usage of enums will look like. So in this case, there's an example of class engine. Enum engine that has two values, basic and memory, and this library will be introduced in Magento by creating a wrapper in Magento framework around this library.
Which library?
Library, it's MyClabs PHP enum. This seems to be very widely used library. I did research, and there are lots of libraries for PHP that can be used to create enums, but this is widely used, and it used by some projects like Doctrine and PHP Stan also. Some libraries for PHP Stan use this library. So that's a proposal.
We'll be able to use SPL at some point? Or?
I'm not sure. It depends on what will happen to this PHP extension. Currently, it seems that you cannot use it with PHP 7. So it doesn't even work.
Oh, it doesn't work.
It doesn't even work with PHP 7. I haven't tried, but people say that it doesn't work. But also, it's a separate library. It's not compiled with PHP. So even if it works, even if it make it work as a separate library, we will have to ask people to install this library in addition to all of the
easier to the composer.
It's just I prefer to have implementation in PHP in this case. So that's it.
Can you, for the proposal, can you make it more clear what solution we are choosing? Because like there are two sentences. There is native PHP extension. There is widely used PHP implementation, and if somebody just goes quickly through the document, it's hard to understand what is the solution.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Okay, I will do that. Okay.
So in general, you just suggest to start using enums and add this library.
Yes.
Can you compare performance of the solution and especially memory usage?
Yeah, because SPL will have that benefit.
So we cannot compare because you cannot install this library on PHP 7.
No, I mean PHP version. Because I expect that it significantly can increase memory usage and decrease performance if enum will be widely used.
Yeah, library.
So what do you want to compare?
If you would implement enums on all system config, for example, whatever, and you instantiate those classes, by how much the memory usage would increase? Simple question.
So actually,
I think you wanted to compare PHP implementation and native PHP support of enums, right?
No, I want to compare enums versus strings, because also you don't mention that enums can be used as K for arrays, so it's also decrease. We cannot use it in some cases.
Yeah, maybe I need to clarify in the proposal where should we use enums. So enums probably I cannot think about example where we will have to use enum to declare something that like a long list of values. Usually, like those things that are countable are very short. Like the longest thing I can imagine is a list of encodings that we might consider representing this enum.
Quite a bit long as well.
Actually, I see the more benefit if we just left with string, like create interface with list of all possible values and use this, and write some static test to verify values that come to this method is in proper list.
But we would not be able to enforce it. Like even with static tests, there is a low possibility. Like maybe it will work for Magento, but it would not work for all of the third-party extensions because there is a big possibility that they will not run static tests.
Yeah, but actually, I even don't see problem any here. Here, so why you need to use some enums that are not available? What's the reason for this?
Mistake.
So
mistake. Use constant instant string representation. It's resolved.
Yeah, but you cannot.
Mistakes.
I mean, you cannot enforce how client code is written.
Yeah.
You can only, but typing gives you that.
All modern
so I don't know, to not spend too much time as we don't have it, let's add comparison, some performance measurements. We can take like really list of, I don't know, currencies or list of locales or whatever. We have something long that may use enums and just measure. To be honest, I don't think it will be big difference, but let's measure and include those results and then decide.
Okay. So another item is adding dependencies on packages in the patch releases. By packages, I mean different libraries. These are not Magento packages. For instance, adding dependency on this MyClabs PHP enum in a patch release. Whether the question is whether or not we should consider this backwards incompatible change, or we can say that this is a patch change. After speaking with Olga, Olga's point is that if another extension has dependency on a different version of this library, potentially it will be backwards. Like there will be upgrade issues. So what do you think? Should we go through the same backwards incompatible changes approval process in this case if we want a dependency on a library in the patch release?
Yeah, actually we discussed it, and I believe adding new modules is major backwards incompatible change. So
module
you
is
cannot
different.
do it.
For modules, there was a reason that it may depend on another module that is disabled, and then installation will fail. So it was related to such a special thing that we have in Magento as status of the module. Libraries, this doesn't exist. So we don't have any rule currently about adding libraries.
But I believe they should definitely.
You mean PHP extension, not libraries, yep.
No, not PHP extensions, PHP libraries. What do you mean extensions? Extensions is something that...
yeah, but if you add PHP libraries, strictly major backward incompatible change. Because if my model that I already use different versions, fail. You cannot install a new version of Magento.
That's what Igor mentioned already.
Yeah, but we already discussed it.
We didn't write it down anywhere.
Okay.
That's what we are saying.
Okay.
Let's just discuss it again, and if we agree to something, we'll write it down.
Yeah, and in addition, we should also write down that all new libraries should go through security review, in addition to backward compatibility.
Mm-hmm. So do we consider this also major change?
I think yes. It depends what's the type of dependency. If you depend on the star in dependency, in this case is okay. But if you have dependency on concrete version, it's major.
And also
I believe there are no difference between Magento modules and PHP extensions. We have the same rule because it's just composer packages. And I believe we have information about new Magento modules.
So if it depends on the star, potentially we can say that it's backward compatible.
It depends on how many dependencies does this have, right? Because every package has its own dependencies as well. And if it conflicts with some other ones that are already included, then you're into some trouble.
Maybe it should be at least minor, I don't know.
Even if we have dependency on the star?
Can we stay for another couple of minutes because Chris has some
Okay.
I mean, we'll have the discussion today anyways. We don't need to discuss it here.
Okay, then we will write it down that minor if it depends on star, and if on more specific version it's major.
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's it.
So, anyways, Chris, what you 5 minutes? Maybe you can go quickly through your question.
So this is Pretty similar to what Elena stated. There is a problem where there was a previous issue that Alex presented where you have a guest customer situation. You lose the cart when you actually log in, right? And his problem was that if you have the same customer when he was logging into multiple devices, you would not know its cart, right? So his proposal, I think it was to return the cart ID, and this proposal is actually to return the whole cart on the customer cart. And in addition to that, whenever you're actually not logged in, you add products to the cart. When you log in, there's no similarity of login in GraphQL. It's just using a token. So basically, you will have to call some mutation, which you will merge the guest cart into customer cart, and you have the guest cart ID, and it will return the cart which has already merged items from the guest. It was a debate whether to actually separate those two things or leave it into one mutation, but there's like, what's a mutation, what's a query in this case, because whether you will get the custom guest card will be a query, and the same as Olena's wish list. If it doesn't have custom card, we have to create one, right? And that will practically convert itself into a mutation. And I already put the alternatives here, how it would look if you would do it all in one query / mutation, where you will have customer card, and if you want to provide the guest card to merge or something like that, provide it here and it will return a card. So all these discussions, I guess we have to get together and discuss it and come to agreement, because we have multiple possibilities here. It is somehow similar to the wish list. I'll put it on a calendar. Any major concerns, like really we shouldn't do this at all, or?
I see the difference. Yes. I see the difference with wishlist is that in case if guest will try to add products to the wishlist, it will get error response because guest. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, but once you're logged in, so you don't have the transfer items problems. But you do have the get something card to get wish list, and whether it will create it or not if it doesn't exist.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so who will schedule a meeting?
I can schedule it, or okay. Alex.
Chris.
Or Chris.
Chris will schedule a meeting and we'll discuss how we move on with it. Okay, good. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for staying for a few minutes longer, and that's all for today. See you next time.
Thank you.